Hello my friends and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be talking about the Beastmaster companions. So in my recent video on underrated subclasses, I mentioned that Beastmaster Ranger is very powerful and extremely fun to play. And I got a lot of questions from people who weren't sure how best to use the companions. They're saying that theirs might die every fight without accomplishing anything, or that they don't know which one to use, or whether you should change which one you're using depending on your level or the fight that you're in. So today we're going to go over each beast at every level that they get something new, talk about their strengths and weaknesses, how to use their abilities for the best effect, and which ones will be strongest in which fights so that you know exactly how to choose which beast you're bringing for the best results. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Tarantula for the $5 donation, Tortilla Bill for the $10, Rajiv Alexander for the $5, Wanda Husbando for the £5, and Big Terry Funker and Daniel Krunke for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really appreciate your support. It really means so much to me. Alright, let's get beastly. So, when you select Beastmaster Ranger, you get the Ranger's Companion ability that lets you summon a Beast Companion once every short rest. Now, this coming back on a short rest means that you don't actually have to keep your companions alive. Obviously, the longer you keep them alive in combat, the more useful they'll be. But if they die, it's only a short rest cooldown to bring them back, so you don't have to worry too much if your beast goes down. You probably will lose your beast a few times over the course of the playthrough, and that's totally okay. You can simply bring it back on a short rest. The other thing that this being a short rest ability gives you is that you can swap which beast you're using, depending on the encounter, very easily, without losing very much. So the Beastmaster Ranger will often want to change out which beast you're using in order to fit the encounter appropriately. Now, of course, if you want to roleplay just having the same beast companion throughout the entire game and having that just be your guy, then that's still totally viable. All 5 of the beasts are strong and absolutely playable, but they all have their different strengths and different weaknesses, which makes them good in certain encounters. So if you want to optimize your playthrough a little more and get the most value out of it, you'll probably be changing. There are 5 beasts, of course: the bear, the boar, the spider, the raven, and the wolf. And for the TLDR, the bear is good for absorbing enemy attacks. The boar is good for killing weak and low health enemies very quickly. The spider is good for locking down large groups of melee enemies. The raven is the most survivable and generally the most broken late game, just a very good all-rounder that gives you a lot of flexibility. And the wolf is always a good choice. It's just a very solid all-rounder animal as well. If you want a rule of thumb and you don't want to have to think about it, use the spider for levels 3 and 4, and then switch to the raven and use it for the rest of the game. And that will absolutely be a reasonable way to play the Beastmaster Ranger. But if you want to get the most value out of your beasts, you're going to be swapping pretty frequently. So we're going to go over every one of the abilities that they get at each level and talk about the encounters that they're good for. Let's start with the level 3 bear. So the game presents the bear as a tank, and that's sort of true in that it will often be targeted by enemies thanks to its low armor class. But it is much less survivable than you might expect for, a gigantic bear and something that the game calls a tank. You actually have to be fairly careful with the bear. With only 11 armor class and 19 hit points in the early game, the goblins and gnolls that you're fighting will probably take it down in 3 or maximum 4 attacks on average. So while you can use it to absorb some enemy attacks and keep your more vulnerable party members alive, it's going to be much more vulnerable than most of your characters. Notice that level 3 Minsk here has 31 HP and much better armor class at this level as well. So the bear is going to be taking a lot of enemy attacks thanks to having low AC, but can't actually receive that many, so you do need to be a little bit careful with its HP. On offense, it has its claws, which have 1d8 plus 2 damage, and this will do an extra d6 damage to a target that's Hunter's Marked, because the Beastmaster Ranger, all your pets do extra damage to your Hunter's Mark target. With only a plus 2 to hit, though, so you can see we're going to be making this attack. You only have a plus 2 to hit thanks to having no proficiency bonus. You will not be hitting very frequently with your claws either. So altogether at the early levels, I don't think the bear is a very attractive package, except that it also comes with Goading Roar, and this ability is very good. Goading Roar is a large AoE ability, it's a wisdom save, and enemies who fail it for 2 turns will have disadvantage on every single one of their attacks. Now the tooltip on this is fairly misleading, because it says that they are forced to attack the character, and that's not true. It doesn't actually change the enemy AI. They'll usually attack the bear anyways, because that's what they were going to do regardless, but if they break line of sight or leave the area, they will just choose another target, because the Goading Roar does not affect the enemy's AI at all. But what it does do is give them disadvantage on every attack that they make, including against the bear. Again, the tooltip here is a little bit misleading. An AoE disadvantage effect in the early game on a wisdom save, which a lot of early game enemies will fail, is actually really strong. So what you're using the bear for mostly in the early game is casting Goading Roar and then running away so that enemies just have 2 turns of disadvantage on all of their attacks, which is really, really powerful. This type of control is really good against fights with lots of weak enemies who are likely to miss the save. It's like casting Fairy Fire, except that they it just will work on even larger area. There's no concentration, and you didn't have to spend a character's action in order to do it. So Goading Roar is the main use for the bear in the early game, and then you can have it tank 1 or 2 attacks before needing to retreat to heal back up. The boar at level 3 I wouldn't recommend. I think it is the weakest of the companions at level 3. It has 11 HP and 11 AC, meaning that it's going to die in 2 hits from most enemies. And with 11 AC and low health, they're going to target it pretty frequently. It also, despite being the damage-oriented companion, is very bad at actually doing damage in the early game, because it does this 1d6 plus 1 tusk attack, but with only a +1 to hit, it's going to miss almost every single attack. Because the boar has low strength, lower even than it only has 13 strength, so it's lower even than the bear, and no proficiency bonus in the early levels, it's going to miss all of these attacks, and even if they hit, they're not that incredible, so you're better off using a different companion for the most part. Boar Charge is an okay ability. It does have some AoE attacks associated with it, so you can use it in order to hit a bunch of things. But unfortunately, the saving throw against it is very, very low. The save DC is 9, so I guess this civilian did fail the save here. But with a DC of 9 on a strength save, a lot of enemies are going to pass that as well in the early game. So while an AoE prone seems attractive, if you want to debuff enemies in an AoE, the spider or the bear are usually going to be better. The boar is not completely useless, but at level 3, I would recommend one of the other companions. The spider. So the spider is by far the strongest companion in the early game, and it's what turns Beastmaster Ranger into such a potent control character in the early game. Your spider webbing things and then you shooting them with arrows will mostly win almost every early game encounter, even without input from your teammates, because this is such a strong combination of control and damage that you have within a single character, thanks to basically having 2 characters acting, one casting a pretty good spell every turn and one dealing great archery damage every turn as well. The spider has only 10 HP, so you do have to be pretty careful not to let it get hit. And with 14 armor class, it is certainly not immune to enemy attacks. 14 AC is definitely not enough that enemies won't hit it, so you need to be pretty careful with the positioning on the spider. But with 16 dexterity, it will at least often win initiative, so it's going to go first, and be able to lock enemies down before they can fight back against it. At this level, it has 2 attacks. It's got the Venomous Bite effect, which does the most damage of any of the companion attacks at this level, 1d8 plus 3, and also can apply poison if they fail the con save against it. And again, thanks to having 16 dexterity, this has a +3 bonus to hit, which still isn't great. It's not going to hit super reliably, but it is better than most of the other companions at this level. The real prize here, though, is web. Every turn, the spider can use web, and This is just an AoE control spell. It's like the web spell, but you can cast it every turn for a 10-foot radius, pretty good lockdown effect that can stop enemy melee characters from going anywhere. The save on this is dexterity based, so against enemy characters with with weak dexterity, this is going to shut them down completely. And even just outputting a bunch of webs turn after turn after turn can easily lock down whole encounters. You can see here that even in this late game against some of these level 8 Flaming Fists, this level 3 spider, they still failed the save and became webbed. And so even though this is a level 3 unit fighting against level 8 enemies, it still did something very relevant. At appropriate levels, of course, it's even better, but the web from the spider is going to shut down entire encounters pretty much on its own. Two other important things about the spider that make it a little easier to keep it alive. It's immune to its own web, so you can have it just go across its webs freely, and enemies that try to follow it may get stuck in the web. And it also has hops, so the spider as a bonus action can jump up to 18 feet here, and unlike for most units jumping, that doesn't require any of its movement speed. You see, we just used a little bit because it didn't jump from exactly where I clicked it. But you can both move and jump in the same turn when you, with the spider without losing any movement speed, which gives it a lot of mobility and also a lot of possible verticality, so you can keep it alive against melee enemies very easily, and then it can rain webs down on them from the sky. The Raven. The Raven is just always a very solid choice, and the same is true at level 3, though the spider being so powerful I think makes it usually the better pick. But the Raven will almost always be an excellent choice at every level, and level 3 is no exception. It's the tankiest of the companions, the hardest to kill, with 13 health, which is 6 less than the bear, but 5 whole more armor class than the bear has, with 16. And 16 AC and 13 HP means that enemies will often need several attacks to take it down. Obviously, you can get unlucky and lose it in one hit, but you can put the Raven in slightly more risky positions. You still don't want to be really risky with it, because, again, 13 health is not a lot, but this will sometimes have enemies miss attacks against it, and then you've just gained a free attack that the enemy didn't make against your party. The main thing with the Raven, of course, is its incredible mobility, which lets you position it such that enemies will attack it only if you want them to. And so when you start learning how to use movement to your advantage, you can make sure that it's ending its turn out of range of enemies. You can have it go over hazardous areas so that they have to follow it in, because it's flying, so it's immune to ground effects. And of course, it can fly 60 feet every turn using the fly action. Offensively, at this level, it's not super special, though it is one of the better choices. 2d4 plus 2 damage on the beak attack, plus an extra d6 to your Hunter's Mark target is good damage. With only a plus 2 to hit, it's not going to hit that frequently, though, so if you want to actually land damage with your attacks, the spider is usually still going to be a better option. But the real prize for the Raven here is Rend Vision. Rend Vision does 1d6 plus 2 damage, and then blinds the target for 2 turns. And you don't have... there is no saving throw against the blind. All you have to do is land the attack. So if you can boost the Raven's attack using Bless, for example, or giving it advantage on attacks, or giving the enemy disadvantage on attacks against it through various control effects, or of course things like Hold Person, you can land this blind very easily, and that enemy will be blinded for 2 turns. Because it's a 2-turn long blind, they will spend one of their turns with disadvantage on all their attacks. It'll shut off their ability to jump, and all of the other great things that blind do. So this is a very powerful debuff against enemies with low armor class, if you can land the hit, or if you have a party set up around landing this effect. So the Raven is, so far, the second best choice after the Spider in general of the ones we've looked at, just because this debuff is so powerful against some kinds of enemies. And finally, the level 3 Wolf. With 13 AC and only 11 health, the wolf is also pretty squishy and pretty easy to take down for enemies, so you do have to be careful with it. But it makes up for it by being the highest damage pet and the most reliable for dealing damage. So if you want a damage contributor at this level, the wolf is going to be the way to go. The wolf has the bite action for 2d4 plus 2, and it's also a plus 2 to hit. But thanks to its pack tactics passive, it has advantage on any attack against an enemy as long as another one of your allies is within 10 feet of that enemy. Or in fact, against any target. As you see here, we still get pack tactics when we're attacking an ally. And having this automatic source of advantage means that the wolf is actually going to land its attacks. The other companions are very unreliable at doing this at low levels, but the wolf usually will, and it hits pretty hard when it does. 2d4 plus 2 plus an extra d6 is very meaningful damage at level 3, and you can get that pretty reliably every turn. Lunging Bite is also pretty nice. This will, again, have a decent chance of landing. And when you actually hit the enemy with Lunging Bite, they have to make a saving throw. It's only DC 10, but a lot of enemies at low levels... I also took out the wolf there because Gale had Armor of Agathis on him. That's actually really funny. But a lot of enemies at these low levels do have pretty low strength. You're fighting a lot of goblins and spiders and things which have low strength. And so they'll fail the save against the prone pretty reliably. So you can use Lunging Bite to knock enemies prone pretty frequently. So if you want a damage dealer, the wolf is going to be the way to go. Though I think that the spider does a pretty good job doing damage and has a lot of control. So it's still usually what I'd recommend at this low level. But the wolf's damage can definitely contribute if you're in a low damage party. At level 5, your beasts become much more effective, and there's also a lot more choices as to which one is going to be the best at this level and which one you're going to use in which encounter. At level 5, they now benefit from your proficiency bonus, which of course, because your level 5 is plus 3. So they get your proficiency bonus to their attacks, as well as to their armor class, making them both much tankier and much more likely to actually land their attacks and do damage. In addition to this, it's not listed on the tooltip, they all get more health and additional abilities. So let's go over what those are and talk about how to evaluate the companions at level 5. At level 5, you can see that our bear now has a fancy helmet and is called Ursa Major, and now has 15 armor class and 39 health, which makes it a lot tankier. With 15 AC and 39 health, it's still going to go down pretty fast under focused enemy fire, but you can see its health has caught up a lot to Minsk's health here, and with 15 armor class, enemies will occasionally miss attacks against it, so the bear is much more effective as a tank starting at level 5. In addition to that, it also gets an additional ability, and its old abilities get some extra effects. So its claws get the proficiency bonus to hit, so they're going to hit much more frequently now with a plus 5 bonus to hit instead of the plus 2 that we had before. And Goading Roar has the save DC increased by 3 as well, so enemies are much more likely to fail the save against this. We also get the Honeyed Paws ability, and this ability is really, really strong, and makes the bear pretty potent against all kinds of enemies, especially weapon attackers, because disarm is a really good effect. But any enemy that you can reliably land this attack against is going to be really good. You often see this ability discussed as part of the easiest setup to get the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane, because it's a no-save disarm, so as long as you can guarantee landing the attack, you can get the Silver Sword in Act 1. You can definitely look it up under the Silver Sword entry on the wiki if you want more info about that. But even outside of that one sort of exploit, this is just a very strong ability. It's plus 5 to hit, which means it's not going to hit incredibly reliably, but again, you can boost it. And just like the Raven, this effect happens with no saving throw as long as the attack lands. So against any enemy with a weapon, you can disarm them as long as you can land the Honeyed Paws attack. And against any enemy without a weapon, you can knock them prone as long as you can land the attack. No save effects that debuff enemies like that are really valuable, and being able to spam this every turn or use Goading Roar every second turn and then Honeyed Paws every turn, so enemies have disadvantage on all their attacks and are often disarmed or prone, makes this a very disruptive piece. Generally, you're going to want to use the bear starting at level 5 in fights where there are lots of enemies with weak wisdom saves so that the goading attack is good, but adding honeyed paws into the mix means that you can absorb a lot of damage. So if you're worried about enemy damage, say against an encounter with a lot of archers, the bear makes a very good choice. Level 5 is also when the boar really comes into its own. Again, with the addition of your proficiency bonus to attacks, you can actually land your damaging attacks pretty frequently. And the saving throw on boar charge being increased means that this is now a much more powerful ability. Boar charge also benefits from the new abilities that you get quite a bit, because you have rage, which allows you to, just like a normal character, a normal barbarian rage, gain resistance to all physical damage. So you're 27 HP and 14 AC, you're still pretty squishy, but against physical attacking enemies, you have effectively 54 health, which is a much more respectable total, and it multiplies healing that is being applied to you and everything like that. Add 2 slashing damage to each of your attacks, and also can use Frenzied Strike. Frenzied Strike is a bonus action attack, which gives you effectively 2 attacks in a turn as the boar. And remember that all of your attacks apply the Hunter's Mark bonus damage from your ranger as well. So you can deal 1d6 plus 4 plus an extra d6 with Frenzied Strike as a bonus action. And with your tusks, you can deal also 2d6 plus 4 damage as well. So 4d6 plus 8 in one turn is pretty respectable, given that this isn't even your actual character acting. All of those bonuses do apply to the boar charge as well, so you're going to get extra damage on the... and the rage bonus gets applied to both the Hunter's Mark bonus and the boar charge bonus when you use that, so you kind of double count the rage bonus. So this, the boar becomes fairly tanky against physical damage dealers and starts doing a lot of damage. Generally speaking, I want to use the boar against squishy enemies, so I still prefer it against spellcasters than against physical damage dealers, but if you're either in an encounter with only physical damage, so the rage is at its best, or in an encounter against weak spellcasters that the boar can just tear to pieces and kill them before they can cast, this is now a really potent threat. So anytime you want lots and lots of damage, or against enemies who are purely physical, you can break out the boar starting at level 5. At level 5, the spider mostly gets a lot tankier, so the consequences of positioning it in the wrong place are a lot lower. Because with 18 armor class, even a lot of enemies at level 5 are going to miss their attacks against it pretty reliably. And even if they do hit, 24 HP should be enough to survive one hit from most enemies, so you'll have time to heal it back up or get it out of a risky situation. So the spider is pretty difficult to kill at level 5 still, especially given its mobility and that it's going to be locking down a lot of enemies. In terms of its offensive capabilities, it doesn't get that much at level 5 though. So Venomous Bite, of course, hits a lot more reliably with your proficiency bonus, and because it now has 18 dexterity, that gives it plus 7 to hit with its attacks, which is a pretty respectable bonus at this level. And so you can see here we have our full plus 7 to hit. And the damage is still okay, though it has started to fall off fairly significantly at this point. Web is still amazing, of course, but the Cocoon ability that you get as your new ability is mostly not that strong. Cocoon is a pretty good debuff. It stuns the enemy completely, preventing them from doing anything, so they can't move, act, react, or take bonus actions or anything like that. But if you deal damage to them, or they pass a strength save, which they get at the start of each of their turns, they break out of it. And since it has both dexterity saves to avoid it in the first place and strength saves to break out, enemies will usually be able to pass one of the two of those and avoid falling for the Cocoon. Also, it's a melee single target disable as opposed to a ranged AoE disable, so you're usually just going to want to use the webs. The spider is still just very good in the encounters it was already good in, and you can definitely still use it. The stats get way better, but it doesn't get a new play pattern at this level. The Raven, on the other hand, gets a ton of buffs at level 5. So firstly, it becomes a very respectable tank with 19 armor class. A lot of enemies are going to miss attacks against it. With only 21 HP, it will die pretty quickly, but you can mitigate this with healing and with aid to increase its base HP, stuff like that. And a lot of enemies will miss their attacks, or just choose not to attack it. So the Raven is very survivable thanks to its actually quite high armor class at this level. It also gets an increase to its base damage. None of the other companions do this, but it goes from 2d4 plus 2 to 3d4 plus 2 damage on its beak attack, plus an extra d6 with Hunter's Mark. And of course, the ability to land your attacks more reliably with your proficiency bonus makes Rend Vision a very good ability at this point, and the reliable blind combined with your mobility and high armor class means that this is going to be debuffing the most dangerous enemy in an encounter very reliably. The other thing that you get is this Bad Omen ability, which is a 30-foot range, ranged attack. Now, a 30-foot range attack is fairly low, but remember that you're a flying unit, so you can go pretty much anywhere, and you have 60-foot base movement speed at this level, so you get a lot of extra move speed. And this is a saving throw, so it's a wisdom save against this effect, which a lot of enemies will be pretty bad at passing. And even if they do save, they still take half damage. So this is a companion that has 100% reliable damage. So you can use it to finish off low enemies, and thanks to its range, you can do it very safely. If you land it, the enemy gets cursed, which gives attack rolls against them advantage. So usually you're only going to want to do that if you need the reliable damage, or if the enemy has really high armor class and bad wisdom saves, Bad Omen is good. Or if you want the range, because attack rolls will have advantage against any enemy you hit Rend Vision against. But you can do both to like curse it and then Rend Vision it, for example. So this is another really nice tool in your arsenal. The Raven at this point just becomes a very strong and flexible all-rounder, very hard to kill, and is going to be useful in pretty much every fight, starting from level 5. At level 5, the Wolf continues the trend of just being a solid all-round pick. It's got decent defenses, with 16 armor class and 31 HP, so it won't die in one hit to most enemies, and some enemies will still miss it. It doesn't have the evasion tanking capabilities of the Raven, but it's still going to be pretty survivable overall. Offensively, it gets a couple additional bonuses. So, obviously, the addition of the +3 to hit makes lunging bite, knocking enemies prone, more reliable. Though they do still get the strength save against it. The save DC has gone up. Usually, you're going to want to use Honeyed Paws if you want to knock enemies prone, because you just have to land the attack. But this is still a pretty powerful debuffing effect. It also replaces the base attack, though you can still do the normal bite attack for the Wolf, with Infectious Bite, which does necrotic damage at base. So some enemies will resist it, some won't that would have resisted physical damage. Having the option is always nice. And if they then fail a con save when you hit them, they become septic for 3 turns. This reduces their constitution by 1 and gives them disadvantage on con saves. An enemy whose constitution is reduced, if they had an even number, is going to lose maximum health. So this can actually do a lot more damage than is listed on the tooltip here. And against healing enemies can be pretty nice as well. This isn't a huge upgrade. The big thing that you get for the Wolf is just, again, solid stats and reliability because of pack tactics. But it's a nice option for potentially doing more damage overall. So if we bite Minsk here, you can see we do okay damage, and now you can actually see that our numbers on our attacks are pretty good at this point, and Minsk, having failed the saving throw, has lost 5 maximum health from 49 to 44 because our constitution got reduced from 16 to 15, so took more damage and also lost max HP there, which is a pretty nice debuff. At character level 7, your animal companions gain some extra abilities, so they can now dash, disengage, and use the help action as a bonus action. Dash, of course, lets you double your movement speed. Dash as a bonus action is super powerful, you know this from rogues, giving you a lot of mobility and a lot of flexibility in combat. Disengage is also nice because the animal companions are often fairly squishy, so the ability to avoid opportunity attacks if you do get them into a bad situation can be very helpful, and having the help action as a bonus action can be really nice for helping up downed characters or removing a bunch of dangerous effects, including sleeps, which are complete disables in the late game. Just having an animal companion waiting in the wings to wake you up can be extremely helpful. My cat is here also while I'm recording this, very appropriate, and obviously he loves to wake me up, so that just makes sense. A funny thing about having my cat watch this is he doesn't care about anything on the screen, but he loves the Raven Companion, so you have to imagine him just like going after it every time the Raven Companion appears on screen. Although these abilities look like they're going to affect all the companions equally, dash as a bonus action in particular is very different for a couple of them. The Raven benefits tremendously from getting dash as a bonus action because it has the 60-foot fly speed, so that doubles to 120 feet, making it incredibly mobile and very hard for enemies to take down. And the Boar benefits the least from these because it already has really good bonus actions in the form of Rage and Frenzied Attack. So it's not going to be using these abilities that frequently. So this, again, tilts the balance a little bit in favor of the Raven. At character level 8, the companions all get a pretty significant bonus. It's not listed here in the level up screen, but they all get additional health. This, again, seems like it's going to affect them all equally, but they all get different amounts of extra HP, and it matters more for some companions than others. So I'll just quickly take you through their new base stats and talk about how that affects their play pattern. At level 8, the Boar has 69 HP, going up 30 from 39, which puts it pretty much on par with a party member in terms of its health. 16 AC is still pretty low for level 8, of course, but this is now a respectable amount of HP, and the bear can absorb several hits before dropping, especially in encounters with lower damage enemies, making it still a pretty respectable damage sponge. The Boar, unfortunately, does start to fall behind a little bit at level 8. It only gets 24 health and 1 AC, just like the Bear, which takes it up to 51 HP and 15 AC. Against physical damage enemies, so enemies who the Rage gives you damage resistance against, this is still pretty tanky, but those encounters are getting a little rarer starting at level 8, where enemies have no way to deal non-physical damage, and the low AC and HP do make the Boar a little bit squishier, so can still be good to take down really weak enemies thanks to its very high damage, but just not getting quite as many stats as the other companions at level 8 does hold it back a little bit for the endgame. The Spider gains 1 AC up from 18 to 19, and also 18 health, going from 24 to 42. At this point in the game, 19 AC is a lot less exciting than it was at level 5. At level 8, enemies will still hit 19 AC a reasonable percentage of the time, though they'll still miss some of the time, and the Spider won't fold like paper. It'll usually be able to take like 2 or 3 attacks from enemies. Some of them will miss. One usually won't be enough to do 40 damage. But it is still going to be mostly sitting at range spamming webs at this point, and the webs have gotten a lot less effective by level 8, so also, again, tends to fall off towards the end game as the just raw stats of the Spider don't keep up quite as well as the other companions. It can still be quite good, you're just going to have to baby it a little more and be a little more careful with it. Also, just having good base armor class means that aid is really effective at this level on the Spider, so if you have a character casting aid in your party, which is very good for the companions, it can get a lot tankier and start being a real contributor to avoiding taking damage. So things do change a little bit if you're boosting its base HP. The Raven goes to 32 HP and 19 AC, so it gains no additional armor class, unlike the other 3 that we've looked at so far, and only 11 health, so it gets very little when you hit level 8. The 11 health is enough to push it over getting one-shot by most enemies, which is important, and thanks to its high mobility, it usually shouldn't be super vulnerable at this stage, but the Raven does get less of a level 8 boost than the other companions. In general, you're going to want to make use of the fact that you have bonus action dash to move 120 feet, so you can have it dart in, make its attack, and then disengage or dash away in order to avoid enemies, and thanks to its abilities, you can do that, even though its defenses at this point are somewhat poor. The Wolf probably gets the biggest boost at Level 8, it also gets an extra armor class, and it gets 30 HP, just like the bear, leaving it at only 8 less HP than the bear and 1 more AC, so it's pretty much as survivable as the bear is against most enemy attacks, and it does more damage overall and is remains just the most solid and reliable companion. Getting a decent amount of extra health contributes to that role. If you don't want to think about it, the wolf remains an excellent choice. And finally, at level 11, we get our Beastmaster Capstone, giving our pets extra attack, so doubling their damage output, especially powerful for the Raven, whose attack scales as you level, so it's now doing pretty significant damage even this late in the game. And they all also get extremely powerful Capstone abilities and increased stats, so let's look at those. At level 11, your bear now has 99 health and 18 armor class, and is a pretty solid tank and damage sponge overall. 99 health puts it basically on par with your party members, so it's like having a full extra health bar, and 18 armor class is a little on the low side, but you want it taking damage because you can resummon it on a short rest, so you're pretty happy when enemies focus damage on your bear. The ability that you get also contributes to that, because you get Ursine Reinforcements, which lets you summon a whole extra bear for 40 more health. This is basically the level 7 bear before you get the level 8 HP upgrade. So it has 15 AC and 40 health. It is controllable. It is uncontrollable. So it's going to act on its own in combat, but you're mostly summoning it just as a sack of hit points for enemies to attack, while you and your actual bear do all of the work. But the ability to resummon this bear, again, every short rest is going to give you even more tanking ability. So at the late levels, the bear companion becomes a really good damage sponge. You can use it in any encounter where you are worried that enemies are going to burst down your party before you can act, like if you're going to lose initiative or you don't think you're going to kill them before they get to go. You can have them focus a bunch of damage on your bears and your bear companions, and that will give you some extra health to play with, so that then you can turn the encounter in your favor. The boar gets a huge power spike when you hit level 11. It gets 85 health and 17 armor class, which is definitely on the more vulnerable side. But against enemies that are primarily physical damage, that you can use the damage resistance from rage, that gives it effectively 170 HP. And then also, of course, multiplies the value of any healing that you're applying, any bonus health you're applying with Aid or Hero's Feast and effects like that, which can make it very tanky against physical damage enemies. Again, the low AC here is more of an advantage, because it's now healthy enough to survive physical damage attacks pretty easily, so you want them directed against the boar. But 17 isn't so low that it's embarrassing and it'll just get hit by everything. The other thing that it gets at this level is Kick Up Mud, which is a really strong ability. So this is an AoE slow, like the spell Slow, and it is usable at will, so as long as you have actions, you can use Kick Up Mud all the time. This gives them 2 turns of the Mud-Drenched effect, which is basically identical to the Slow spell. It removes halves their movement speed, reduces their AC and dexterity by 2, prevents them from using extra attack or dashing and things like that. The only difference is that Slow prevents bonus actions and actions from both being used, and Kick Up Mud doesn't. They can still use their bonus action and their action. But it otherwise applies all the effects of Slow, which is a pretty powerful debuff, especially when you get it for free. Given that the boar at this point is more going to be a tank against physical damage enemies, a dexterity save based debuff that's very powerful is a really nice ability to have. So you can use this against encounters with lots of physical damage and Kick Up Mud every turn, in combination, of course, with Frenzied Strike as a bonus action, so you don't drop your rage and are still contributing damage, makes the boar very, very good in those encounters. The spider, unfortunately, does not get a lot when you hit level 11. The stats are good, of course. 21 armor class is pretty respectable at level 11. Lots of party members will have around that. And 60 HP is not great, but not embarrassing. But if you want high AC, the Raven is going to be better. And if you want general tankiness, the Boar or the Wolf are going to be the best overall. So the stats don't matter that much on the spider. The new ability that you get also is not particularly exciting. Bursting Brood is a 30-foot ranged attack, but unfortunately, that does medium damage. 2d10 piercing damage is okay, but not anything to write home about at level 11. But unfortunately is bugged and uses the spider's strength to roll its hit chance instead of its dexterity. So you can see here we have a 50% chance to hit with that, 65 with our dex-based attack. So you're just very rarely going to be actually landing Bursting Brood on enemies since the attack roll is bugged. If you do manage to land it on a character, we'll just do this a couple times here, then they do get infested. So you can see here that they receive the infested condition. And what that will do is it'll do 1d6 piercing and 1d6 poison damage every turn at the start of the character's turn. They then get a dexterity save in order to avoid that. The only interesting thing about infested is that if the character's hunter's marked, then they take 1d4 plus 2d6, because it applies the extra d6 hunter's mark damage from Praise Scent to both damage components of infested. So that's an okay damage over time effect, but again, at level 11, really nothing to write home about, and the fact that it's so unreliable means that the spider sadly does not get that much at the capstone level. With the Raven Companion's capstone abilities, you can pretty clearly see which of the Beast Companions was the developer's favorite. The Raven goes up to 22 armor class and 44 health. Now, 44 health is low, but 22 AC is pretty respectable at this point, and Aid and Hero's Feast and other effects like that can fix your health, making this character, this companion, extremely tanky and very difficult to take down. In addition to that, you get not one, not two, but 3 new effects when you hit level 11, unlike most of the other characters. So your damage goes up again. It goes up only from 1d4 to 1d6 on the bonus damage, but that's still pretty nice, because now your attack is going to hit for 2d4 plus 2d6 plus 2. If against a hunter's marked enemy, which is a pretty respectable just base attack, given that you can do it twice a turn thanks to extra attack, and this isn't even costing your actual character its movement, or costing the Raven the main things that it does at this point. The Raven also gets On Black Wings, which lets you summon 2 allied Ravens, so you get 2 extra Ravens. These are, again, these are the level 3 Ravens, so they're just 16 AC and 13 HP, but they'll each absorb a hit. And of course, they can still blind enemies. All they have to do is land their Rend Vision attack, and they'll blind them. Again, they're not controllable, but they will use Rend Vision a reasonable amount of the time, so On Black Wings is pretty good. But the big thing here is that unlike the Bearer reinforcements, there's no cooldown on this. You can just recast it every single turn. There's no rest requirement or anything, so you can use On Black Wings as often as you want. You also get to upgrade your base movement effect. So your flight effect now comes with a Cloud of Darkness, and when you use your flight here, it's going to leave a cloud of darkness everywhere when you land. The Raven also has become immune to blindness, so it's immune to its own darkness effects. And you can do this as many times per turn as you have movement, so you can effectively cover the whole battlefield in darkness very, very easily. Remember when I mentioned that the Raven also benefits a lot from getting Dash as a bonus action? Use Dash as a bonus action, use Fly, and you can cover the entire battlefield in darkness over and over and over again, leaving enemies completely unable to act without being blinded with no saving throw. Especially powerful in parties with Warlocks or other sources of blind immunity like the Eversight Ring, but darkness preventing enemy ranged attacks and just being completely broken remains an extremely powerful effect, and you can see just how much blindness you can create. Also, something that I failed to mention at level 5 with the Raven is that because it's permanently flying, the Raven is uniquely powerful starting at level 5 with Spike Growth, which Rangers get at level 5, because it can sit on top of the Spike Growth. So you can combine Spike Growth with the Darkness to stop enemies from jumping out of it. The Raven will be immune to both effects, and that is just an easy way to win a lot of fights, which is what makes the Raven overall the most powerful endgame companion, because free darkness all over the battle every single turn is amazing. free summons, of course, are very, very good, and the fact that it's overall the tankiest and most mobile, so it's always going to be doing what you want, just makes it an overall incredible choice at level 11. The Wolf Companion's main claim to fame at level 11 is just its overall extremely solid stat line. It has 21 armor class and 91 HP, which makes it by default the hardest of the companions to kill. 3 higher AC than the bear, and only 8 less HP means that enemies are going to have a really hard time taking down your wolf here. And of course, with 21 armor class, a totally respectable number, even though it's not 22 like the Raven, it still uses extra HP from Hero's Feast and Aid and effects like that really, really well. So the Wolf Companion can be the tankiest and hardest to take down. In terms of defensive capabilities, it's almost identical to having a full extra character on the battle, in the encounter. The bonus ability, unfortunately, is not that exciting. Lupine Slash is fine, 2d6 plus 6 force damage in a 10-foot cone, and this is, it does work with extra attack, so you can use it once and then you can use it again. Also has a really cool animation, so it does have that going for it, but the amount of damage that you get from this isn't wildly exciting. There are cases where it can be pretty good. If you're using, like, the Black Hole Illithid power to pull a bunch of enemies together, then you can get a lot of damage from this, but your animal companions are mostly there for their disruptive abilities more than their damage. The wolf does a little bit of both and remains a reasonable damage threat, a pretty good tank, and a reasonable disruptor with lunging bite at this point, so is still, as always, a very solid middle-of-the-road choice. If you're looking for a companion that just is going to be good no matter what, the wolf remains a very solid pick. So just to quickly sum up when you use each of these companions once again. The bear is really good against high damage encounters. So enemies who are making lots of attacks, who you want to not kill your valuable party members, having them deal damage to the bear or be disrupted by its AoE attack disadvantage is very helpful. It's much weaker against enemy spellcasters because they'll just fry it in an AoE, and it doesn't have a lot of offensive capability, so you're usually going to use it against weapon attackers where you're worried that they're going to do a lot of damage to your party. The boar is incredibly strong against physical damage encounters, so enemies that have only bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, starting at level 5. Never use it before level 5, but after that, the boar is pretty good against physical damage encounters. It's also good against encounters with lots of squishy enemies that it can kill quickly thanks to its really high damage, and in the end game becomes really good against groups of melee enemies with the AoE slow effect you can spam every turn, where it becomes a pretty powerful debuffing and damage threat that's also extremely hard to kill. The spider is the king of the early game. It's going to be excellent for the first, 7 levels or so, and will absolutely obliterate melee encounters. It tends to fall off later in the game, because enemies will start passing the saves against the webs, but early on, the spider rules the roost. The Raven is just a great pick all of the time, but especially in the end game just gets so much from the level 11 capstone that starting at level 11, the Raven, it's very hard to go wrong with it, especially if you're a darkness-focused party. But it's also just going to be really good for parties that want to go longer without resting, because it's rarely going to die, and if there are enemies that are hard to reach, or that you're worried about one specific strong enemy, you can blind it over and over again and take it out of the fight. So it's good against boss fights, it's good if you're worried your companion's going to die, and generically just very strong overall. And finally, the wolf is just a great all-rounder pick. It doesn't shine specifically in any specific encounters, but it's very reliable for just doing a little bit of damage, taking a little bit of damage, and always contributing thanks to all of its abilities, giving it much more reliable stats, and it's just very good base stats overall. So you can use it as a good all-rounder choice if one of the other companions doesn't fit that encounter, or if you just want a companion that will last you throughout the game, the wolf or the raven are going to be probably the best picks overall, though any of them can work. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the Beastmaster companions. Definitely let me know if you like this type of deep dive into a specific mechanic. I've started doing a few more videos like this because people have been enjoying them, but Let me know if this is the type of thing that you would like to see more of. I'm very open to doing it. And let me know if it's not the type of thing you want to see more of, if you prefer standard build guides. I'm interested in that feedback as well. As always, of course, if you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to leave a comment and hit the like button. Helps me out with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 guides and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, folks. I'll catch you next time.